Hello and welcome to Fight News Now. I'm John Pollock along with John Ramdeen and Robin Black. Weather-wise, it's a miserable day in Toronto, but fight-wise, these two have grins from ear to ear because UFC 206 has gotten a new featherweight bout, automatically the number 2 fight on this card, with Jose Aldo's potential future opponents meeting. We got Anthony Pettis. He will be in action against Max Holloway, who has won his last 9 fights. This is an outstanding fight. I think that this is just an incredible fight, and I think everyone will agree the number 2 fight, and probably going to end up as the number 2 fight on the show.
It's an amazing fight, and I would imagine now that the casual fans are satisfied. You have the light heavyweight championship of Daniel Cormier and Anthony Rumble Johnson. You have this co-feature bout. As you pointed out, the winner of this will probably get a shot sooner rather than later at 145 pounds. Anthony Pettis, when he was the 155-pound champion, everybody's calling him the greatest fighter in the world, the pound-for-pound best. Max Holloway, we always had a feeling that he would challenge for a UFC title at some point in his mixed martial arts career because of how far he's come. So you look at those 2 fights, Do Ho Choi on the card taking on Cub Swanson, and rumors are that Jordan Meehan is supposed to make his return. Now all you need is another marquee fight, and that's a pretty solid night of mixed martial arts.
We still want another
I know,
of course we do.
Of course the fans want that. I mean, it's really going to be a great night of mixed martial arts when you look at
this
the
is
body.
a great fight card.
Yeah,
I don't think that's in dispute of anyone that is watching this and just simply looking at pure fights. I don't think this is going to be at the level of some of the other pay-per-views. I mean, but I think that's to be expected. But look at this card. I don't think many are complaining about this lineup from a quality standpoint.
Yeah.
Did you see how good Pettis looked in that last fight?
Did you see how good Max Holloway looked when he beat your boy Cub Swanson?
Yeah, hey, don't bring that up. Don't be bringing that up. And Max Holloway's one of these guys that actually, the deeper you look, the better he is. And the more you learn about him, the more complete he is. And at one time, we were like, the complete fighter has to wrestle and kickbox and do jiu-jitsu. Now the complete fighter has to have all of these attributes about them, too. I mean, the kid's got swagger. He's incredibly tough. He's visceral, and he wants it. But he's also really smart. You know, he's also highly intelligent. He makes smart choices in the fight, and he has good feel. He feels the fight as well. This is still a ridiculously hard fight, but that's what the kid wants. Yeah. Harder and harder fights. Because Anthony, when we saw Anthony in that last fight against Oliveira at his very best, that was chilling. Yeah. You know, because he's always been spectacular the way he moves and fights. But what he was able to dig out of himself in that one was pretty awesome.
This will be chilling, too, in December in Toronto for all of these guys, especially Max Holloway.
Not a summer show? Come on.
Anthony was here, and he said even when he came up here a couple of weeks ago, he thought it would be freezing.
Yeah.
So at least he's
the guy's from Milwaukee, for God's sake.
Does this fight gain any more importance for the guys because of the uncertainty at featherweight? We don't know what's going to happen with Conor McGregor after November 12th in regards to that featherweight championship. Jose Aldo is at least, you know, his career is up in the air. He did meet in Las Vegas last week, but he doesn't seem any closer to having an interest in taking a fight. I mean, there's a weird algorithm that could lead to these two suddenly being the focal points of this featherweight division if Jose Aldo, for whatever reason, decides not to come back and Conor McGregor is going to stay at a higher weight class.
And I think if you're anybody around the top end of the 145-pound division, you have to realize that. Everybody sees that there's uncertainty with the champion, Conor McGregor, and that 145-pound title. So if you're Anthony Pettis, if you're Frankie Edgar, if you're Jeremy Stephens, or if you're Max Holloway, you just have to have career performances. Now, that's easier said than done, but you have to. Jeremy Stephens, if he ever wants a crack at the UFC Featherweight Championship of the world, he's got to take out Frankie Edgar. So he has to look at this as his title fight. And if you want the opportunity to fight for gold, right now, we've talked about it, 155 pounds, 145 pounds, 170 pounds are arguably the deepest divisions in mixed martial arts. So you really have to separate yourself from the pack, and that comes with every time you step into the octagon against a top-level competitor. So they can't look at this anything other than they're fighting for their future.
The uncertainty, I'm pretty certain if Conor McGregor wins this fight, the one he'd vacate is 145. It's a ton of work to go down there. And that I'm pretty certain if he were to win that fight, that's what he'd do. And then Jose Aldo, I guess, would be the featherweight champion.
Do you think that would be enough for Jose Aldo, that if they strip McGregor of the title, that would be enough of a incentive for Jose Aldo to take a fight?
I think
Maybe.
Yeah, you know what? When you look at what Jose Aldo did in that last fight with Frankie Edgar, he literally evolved himself in a single fight to an entirely different thought process, entirely different approach to fighting against one of the great fighters in his weight division. That's the performance that forever, if you ever forget, or if you ever, oh yeah, Jose Aldo, you know, he's good, oh yeah, that guy's got a mean leg kick. If you're ever undervaluing him, you look at that fight. Go in there and shocking Frankie, shocking Mark Henry, one of the best coaches in the game, and completely reinventing his entire flavor and texture of how he fought. That was incredible. So when you're that good, you should come back, you know, but it's also his life. He can do what he likes.
On the George St-Pierre front, he did release a video it was the most Canadian response ever, just politely telling Michael Bisping that he did meet with Ari Emanuel and Dana White, which I think is progress in that, but there is nothing to December the 10th for George St-Pierre. So I think people are seeing that.
They're still holding their breath.
That window closing.
People are still holding their breath. They get their fingers crossed. Again, because people, as much as Anthony Pettis and Max Holloway might be exciting for you, Robin, and myself, and a lot of the hardcore fans, they still need some marquee matchup. And I don't think the majority of people won't be satisfied until it's George St-Pierre.
Yeah, I'm not 100%. I mean, part of you looks at that thing was closed up so nice. I want to see George fight as much as the next guy. But look how nicely you closed that package up. You were the champion. You had avenged every loss you ever had. You were very wealthy. You're healthy. You know,
he still wants to fight.
He still wants to fight.
His people are. Go on social media, see all of his supporters and friends, and they've all said the same thing. George wants to fight, and if the guy wants to fight, he says, "I do want to fight." But the circumstances have to be right.
Well, and that is the best reason of all to fight. Not for money or not because you want to prove something or you want to relive something, just because you love it. He doesn't have any reason he needs to fight except for the love of combat, and that is the best reason to fight.
And sometimes you wake up when you're 41 years old as a heavyweight and you decide, I do want to fight again, and you sign with Rizin.
Yes,
your name is Shane Carwin, so he's going to be fighting in the second round of their openweight tournament. Rizin has also announced that they have signed Tetsuya Kawajiri, which when he got released by the UFC, I think you could connect the dots of where his next destination
I actually didn't think that. I thought for sure that and I'm sure I would not be surprised to see Kawajiri end up in Bellator as well as fight in Rizin. But I'm surprised that Bellator didn't go after him aggressively. But again, doesn't mean that he won't be fighting for both organizations.
Well, you always just empathetically put yourself in the mind of people and think, well, what if that was me? And you realize, oh, there's a lot of things outside of just fighting. What country do I want to live in? Where do I enjoy living? How much money does it cost me here versus here? What does my wife want to do? All of those things really come into it. So, and you have to put yourself in their mind and imagine all of the different variables. So it might be as simple as, you know, America's cool, but I like Japan. It might be as simple as, I want to go to Russia for, you know, my wife hates it here. It could be anything.
I think as well, when we look at heavyweights, I mean, Shane Carwin, of course, it was his back problems that were the major reason why he ended up retiring. The guy hasn't fought since 2011 at UFC 131, going all the way back there. But
he just had a one-arm fight. So
clearly, he's ready to go.
Ready to go.
I'm surprised Rizin hasn't adopted the arm behind your back tournament model yet. Maybe that'll be a future idea for them anyway. But nonetheless, I look at the heavyweight division and where the UFC is going to be 18 months from now. And when Brock Lesnar's deal comes up with WWE, the guy's going to be 40 years old. And you cannot convince me that the appetite is not going to be there, especially for the new UFC when they're looking for something that is going to spark major interest. I think that demand is going to be there for Brock Lesnar
100%.
if he wants to just use it for a bargaining chip with the WWE.
I agree, and there's also a lot of matches for Brock Lesnar. Let's just say he doesn't want to face the top end of the guys, the Fabrizio Verdums, the Cain Velasquez. Again, you're telling me you couldn't sell Roy Nelson versus Brock Lesnar to the world? I mean, people want to see Brock Lesnar, and there are a lot of matchups that make sense for the former WWE champion.
I still can't believe he won that last fight against Mark Hunt. That blew my mind. It was amazing.
We are here each and every weeknight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. It's Fight News Now here on Fight Network.